The Sumerians described them as humanoid but non-physical spirit beings who had the capability of morphing or phasing into human form.
In cuneiform texts, the Anunnaki are described in great detail, including how they lived for hundreds of years. They had tremendous knowledge and power over the entire world.
Minutes ago, an explorer found critical evidence that the Anunnakis are alive and came from planet Nibiru. When Homo sapiens arrived about 300,000 years ago, we took over. Our technology leaped from crude tools to exploring outer space in just thousands of years. Or is this just a lie, and were the makers of humanity always among us? Let us explore why we are mere puppets and blind followers created by distant, powerful gods. The dawn of hominins. Around 7 million years ago, a chimpanzee decided to stand on 2 legs, marking the beginning of a new group called hominins. Over the following millions of years, these early humans developed larger brains and began using tools made of stone. They weren't just another type of ape, they were a step forward in evolution with skills in hunting, fire usage, and tracking the movements of the animals they depended on for food and materials. It took millions of years just to refine the design of a simple stone spearhead, and even longer to modify it into a more effective shape. By about 300,000 years ago, Homo sapiens emerged and quickly started to outcompete and eliminate their Neanderthal cousins, becoming the most dominant species. Then, technological growth started to speed up dramatically. In just 30,000 years, human technology advanced from primitive tools to the ability to send probes to explore other planets. The explanation for this sudden leap in capability is controversial. Some believe that humans didn't evolve naturally. According to various ancient texts, humans were designed as the perfect workforce by a much more advanced alien race that ancient writings claimed came from the sky. Let's consider Mesopotamia, often referred to as the birthplace of civilization. This region predates the towering pyramids of Egypt and even Stonehenge. Here, the Sumerians established one of the earliest and most developed civilizations known to history. While there are older historical sites, such as Göbekli Tepe and Milafat, these were smaller in scale compared to the expansive Sumerian civilization. The realm of agriculture, the Sumerians were ahead of their time, creating the first plow and developing an elaborate system of irrigation that supported their farming needs. While the Greeks are often credited with developing the concept of city-states, it was actually the Sumerians who first organized their society in such a manner. Each Sumerian city-state operated independently but adhered to a common set of laws known as the Code of Urnamu, which were among the earliest legal codes in the world. Ancient Samaritan texts give a rather simple reason for why technology didn't develop faster. People were too busy digging, not for coal, but for gold. Interestingly, gold was just a shiny metal that looked nice but had no real use for a very long time. Gold has now become crucial. It's used in electronics, in medical treatments to fight cancer, and even in environmental efforts to clean air and water. Its importance surged only recently, which seems odd, considering its long-standing insignificance in practical applications. This sudden change in the value of gold brings us to the Anunnaki, described in ancient stories as sky gods from Sumer. In reality, they were aliens from another planet, desperate for gold to fix their own planet's environmental problems. They discovered Earth about 450,000 years ago, not with the intention of helping humans, but to use Earth's resources for themselves. Our planet was rich with the gold they needed, so they decided to use it to their advantage. To obtain the gold, the Anunnaki created humans specifically to work as miners. This wasn't a kind gesture, but a strategic move to ensure they got what they needed. The idea that these beings were gods was likely just a tale to make humans more willing to work without question. The idea of a hidden planet belonging to the Anunnaki is often discussed. Some people, inspired by interpretations of old texts and certain enthusiastic researchers, think this planet might be the riddle Planet 9, or Planet X, that some claim exists in the outer reaches of our solar system. This planet, called Nibiru by some, is central to many stories about these ancient aliens. Next, we dive into a tale of power and survival, the Twilight of Nibiru. Anu, a leader among the Anunnaki, supposedly stood on his balcony, laughing. This wasn't because he found something funny, but rather it was a sarcastic reaction to the situation. Anu is a title, not a personal name, used by leaders of his people. This history, when we strip away the allure of divine intervention, looks more like a straightforward case of exploitation. The supposed connection between Earth's destiny with Nibiru might seem like a tale of cosmic significance, but it could also be seen as a harsh lesson on how more advanced beings might exploit others for their own survival. The narrative of gods coming to Earth and altering human history is compelling, but when viewed through a lens of skepticism, it becomes a story of utilitarian need rather than mystical intervention. This perspective invites us to look at these ancient myths with a critical eye and consider the possibility that our ancestors framed their experiences with these so-called gods in ways that made sense to them, even if the truth was more mundane. They were simply part of an alien agenda focused on resource extraction. About 50,000 years ago, Anu, a young and ambitious leader, took over the throne from the former king, Alalu. Chosen by the council to guide Nehru through tough times, Anu found himself at the helm during a worsening planetary crisis. Despite strict industry regulations, the factories on Nibiru kept pumping pollution into the air. They had the technology to manage this pollution, but the enormous air purifiers that dotted the cities were overwhelmed and began to fail. Unexpected volcanic eruptions only added to their problems, releasing ash and poisonous gases that clogged the air purifiers with massive flows of molten debris. Within a few weeks, these purifiers started to break down, and within a few months, the atmosphere itself started to deteriorate. The protective ozone layer of Nibiru was thinning out and in some places disappeared altogether. The yellow haze that filled the sky made it hard to see the twin moons and stars that used to light up the night. Living on Nibiru, especially for the Anunnaki who could live for up to 200,000 years, became increasingly difficult. The older Anunnaki remembered the days when the night sky was bright with stars, but the younger ones had never seen such sights. The last of the bright stars had faded away years before. The cities, once filled with life, now had empty streets shadowed by ancient buildings. These buildings, along with once beautiful avenues adorned with sculptures and fountains, now stood as cruel reminders of better times that had passed. The gardens that were once lush with unique plants and flowers were now just dry, dead patches. What was once a vibrant landscape had turned into a desolate wasteland, a clear victim of the failing environment. Anu and his people were well aware that their planet was dying, and they were desperately running out of time. Even though the best minds were working to solve these issues, the situation looked hopeless. Tiny particles hung suspended in the atmosphere, where gold played a crucial role in both reflecting and absorbing the harmful radiation from the sun and outer space. It represented a desperate attempt to stabilize their atmosphere, a long, uncertain endeavor, but it remained their only option. The Anunnaki spared no effort. They invested all their resources into an ambitious plan to send expeditions across the solar system in search of planets rich in gold. The goal was to mine these celestial bodies and transport the gold back to their planet, dispersing it into the atmosphere in a bid to save their world. For years, this extensive search yielded only disappointments, with probes returning reports of nothing more than useless volcanic rocks and toxic gases. Yet, against this backdrop of continual failures, a probe finally discovered significant amounts of gold. The find included other vital resources as well. During a council meeting attended by key figures such as Ani, Inanna, Enki, and Utu, it was Anu's son, Enlil, who shared the news. He reported that one of their probes had identified a planet that was not only rich in gold, but also abundant in liquid water, and possessed a strong magnetic field that could shield it from harmful radiation. This planet, located near the yellow star, was identified as Earth. Earth orbited the Sun much faster than Nibiru, which took 3,600 Earth years to complete one orbit. Convinced of the potential of this new discovery, Anu saw no other option given their dire circumstances. He advocated for an immediate expedition to Earth, especially as Nibiru was soon to come near Earth, making the timing ideal. However, Enlil had further insights to share, noting that Earth was teeming with life, including intelligent beings. These beings were primitive and much smaller in stature compared to the Anunnaki, standing under 6 feet tall due to Earth's stronger gravitational force, which restricts the growth of life forms. The Anunnaki, in contrast, were between 12 and 15 feet tall, a result of Nibiru's weaker gravity. Now we see how a new world reacts to its unexpected visitors. The Anunnaki's earthly encounter. Enlil pointed out that despite their basic physical resemblance to the Anunnaki, bipedal with 2 arms, legs, and facial features such as eyes and a mouth, the Earthlings were fundamentally different. Their primitive technology was limited to wood and stone, and they had a propensity for violence and consuming animal flesh. Enlil expressed concern about whether these early humans would perceive the Anunnaki as a threat. Despite the Earthlings' lack of interest in gold and their rudimentary technology, their numbers could still pose a considerable challenge. This was the role of the Aigi, another race that might help manage or mitigate any potential conflicts with these unpredictable Earth dwellers. The atmosphere in the Council was charged, as the survival of the Anunnaki hinged on both the success of this mission and the unpredictable nature of Earth's inhabitants. The Anunnaki enlisted the Aigi, a subordinate alien group, to manage operations away from their home planet. This included tasks from operating machinery to maintaining peace. Deemed intelligent and compliant, the Aigi were chosen to manage any potentially troublesome life forms. After brief discussions, the Council decided to deploy 300 Anunnaki and 600 Aigi in spacecraft, setting their course towards Earth with a brief pause on Mars. Upon entering Earth's orbit, the Anunnaki were captivated by the planet's appearance. Earth showcased vibrant blues and greens, adorned with swirling clouds and expansive oceans that sparkled under the sunlight, an impressive display of nature's beauty. The spectacle momentarily distracted them, but the dire state of their own planet, Nibiru, which was deteriorating, refocused them on their urgent mission: to collect gold needed to repair their planet's atmosphere. Some of their ships stayed in orbit as the others scouted the Earth for an ideal location to extract gold. They eventually decided on the fertile lands between the Euphrates and Tigris rivers, an area that would later be known as Mesopotamia, a name derived from the Greek language meaning between 2 rivers. This region became the hub for their colonial mining operations, and the Aigi were immediately put to work. The Aigi had since been serving them. These beings were similar in appearance to the Anunnaki, but were significantly larger, with heights reaching up to 15 feet and distinct elongated skulls, characteristics that were frequently depicted in ancient Earth art. Tasked with building the magnificent city of Du in just 1 week, the Aigi were driven by the relentless demands of their overlords. This city was intended to be governed by Anu's son, Enki, under whose rule the Aigi would continue their labors. Anu felt cornered by the desperate need to increase production at his workplace. He reluctantly decided to push the Aigi, the group under his control, even harder, despite his discomfort with the harshness this would entail. The Aigi were essentially enslaved by the Anunnaki, the ruling class, and were forced into increasingly brutal working conditions. As a result, the use of severe methods like torture was implemented to meet higher demands. Discontent among the Aigi grew as these extreme methods escalated. it shifted from quiet complaints to loud protests and finally to open rebellion. Atrahasis, a respected leader among the Aigi, passionately declared that they had suffered enough. He argued that they were celestial beings forced to live in dark conditions, and now it was time for them to fight for freedom. The revolt was intense and violent. The Aigi used their mining tools as weapons, breaking free from their chains, and attacked the Anunnaki in the city of Eridu, turning it into a battlefield. The mines collapsed during the conflict, reflecting the chaos of the uprising. Unfortunately, despite their bravery and determination, the Aigi's rebellion was crushed, and they were once again captured and chained. Ani's brother Anle was extremely angry about the uprising and wanted harsh punishment for the Aigi, seeing their actions as a betrayal. However, Enki, another leader among the Anunnaki, suggested a different approach. He believed that their long history with the Aigi could help them establish a new kind of relationship, one that was not based on harshness, but on mutual cooperation. Still, it was clear that the Aigi were not going to quietly return to the mines. The possibility of further rebellion loomed large. Seeking an alternative solution, Anu looked to the forests near their cities, where groups of simple ape-like hominids lived. These beings, possibly ancestors of modern humans, were not very smart, but could walk upright and handle simple tools. Anu saw an opportunity to use these hominids for the laborious tasks needed by their society. The world of ancient myths, strange creatures like gorgons, cyclops, banshees, and two-headed giants remain popular. These figures live on in stories passed down through generations. Meanwhile, according to some tales, the Anunnaki, a group from ancient myths, decided to experiment by combining their DNA with that of a human-like female. Instead of growing the baby in a scientific lab, they implanted it into the female. The result was a baby boy named Adamu, resembling more the Anunnaki than the ape-like beings in the forests. What's striking is that across different cultures and religions, there's a consistent theme of humans being created by a higher power, with variations of the story involving divine substances mixed with earth. But then there's a perplexing gap in our history. There's a sudden leap in how humans developed, moving quickly from simple primates to highly intelligent beings. This sudden burst of intelligence seems out of place, as if it arrived fully formed rather than gradually evolving. Dr. Ellis Silver explores this topic in his book, suggesting that humans might not be originally from Earth. He proposes that perhaps humans were brought here by aliens or created here through genetic engineering using alien DNA. His theory stems from the fact that humans seem poorly adapted to Earth compared to other animals. For example, most animals are equipped with natural protections against environmental hazards like the sun's ultraviolet rays, fur, scales, or feathers, while humans are vulnerable, easily suffering from sunburn and other sun-related illnesses. Watch as ancient choices shape the future in unexpected ways. Adapa and the dawn of the demigods. The average diet today tends to be far from healthy. Many people prefer foods loaded with salt, sugar, fats, and carbohydrates, even though healthier options like vegetables, nuts, and fruits are readily available. Most would rather eat a cheeseburger, fries, and a milkshake instead of a simple salad. Dr. Silver, a scientist, suggests this preference might be because humans aren't originally from Earth. He believes that Earth's gravity is too strong for our bodies, which were not designed to handle it. Dr. Silver proposes that humans might have originated from a planet with much lighter gravity, a concept that supports why humans struggle with back pain and other gravitational stresses. He uses the example of the Anunnaki, a race of beings resembling humans but much taller, about 12 to 15 feet high, to illustrate his point. Their great height, he suggests, is due to evolving on a planet with lighter gravity than Earth's. He has written a book outlining his theories, supported by what he claims is scientific evidence. He connects the emergence of Homo sapiens about 300,000 years ago with the arrival of the Anunnaki on Earth, alongside an event he refers to as the Aiji Rebellion. According to his theory, the Anunnaki created the first humans, Adamu and Hea, not just for company, but with the ability to reproduce on their own. These early humans were initially simple beings who were easily guided and taught. The Anunnaki educated them in essential survival skills, such as building houses, planting crops, and notably mining gold, a resource that was apparently valuable to the Anunnaki. Furthermore, the Anunnaki granted these early humans access to their sacred place, the Garden of Eden, a name and concept that echoes through many of the world's major religions, suggesting a shared root in these ancient narratives. However, as the human population grew, so did their complexity and attractiveness. This led to complications when a human woman caught the attention of Ani, a ruling Anunnaki. Despite strict rules against relationships between Anunnaki and humans, Anu engaged in a relationship with her, a move that broke societal taboos. This relationship resulted in the birth of a child named Adapa, marking a significant turning point. Adapa was different from his predecessors. He was highly intelligent, a result of his mixed Anunnaki and human heritage. He later married a woman named Atiti, and their lineage marked a new era for humankind. Adapa's birth introduced a new dynamic among humans. Previously, they were engineered to be docile and sufficiently intelligent to perform the tasks the Anunnaki needed, like mining gold, without questioning their conditions. Adapa's advanced intelligence, inherited from his Anunnaki lineage, enabled him to question and think beyond the simple existence that had been planned for him and his fellow humans. A new generation of highly intelligent humans emerged, displaying a keen interest in gold and power, inherited from their Anunnaki creators. Yet, a more troubling characteristic also surfaced, a natural inclination towards violence. This aggressive trait quickly led to the extinction of the gentler first-generation humans, either through outright violence or because they did not breed with their more aggressive counterparts. An Anunnaki leader named Enlil, displeased with the constant disruption, attempted to control the population by unleashing disasters such as droughts, diseases, and famines. Despite these tragedies, humans sought help from Enki, their creator god, who frequently intervened to mitigate their suffering and restore environmental balance. Eventually, the Anunnaki collected enough gold to repair their own planet and decided that humans were more trouble than they were worth. They expelled them from both Eden and Eridu, forcing humans to spread out across the world. However, not all humans left. Some remained and formed connections with the Anunnaki. These relationships resulted in children who possessed extraordinary powers, known in legends as demigods, such as Gilgamesh, Hercules, and Perseus. On the other hand, unions between humans and a lesser-known group called the Aiji resulted in the birth of terrifying creatures known as the Nephilim. These giants were notorious for their cruelty and often resorted to eating humans. In spite of these dark aspects, human civilization flourished, expanding from small communities into cities and eventually into vast empires that spanned the globe. This period was marked by great achievements and expansion, though it was also shadowed by the threat of the monstrous Nephilim and the unpredictable actions of their celestial overseers. The planet Nibiru, a giant, travels far past Pluto to the edge of the Kuiper Belt and then swings back toward the inner part of our solar system. As it moves closer to Earth, the situation becomes perilous. The Anunnaki, beings from another world, had been gathering gold from Earth to fix their own planet's atmosphere. With their mission completed, there was no reason for them to stay as Nibiru approached Earth. They knew that being on Earth during such a close encounter with Nibiru could be disastrous. Imagine the worst scenes from every disaster movie combined into one massive catastrophe. That's what was predicted as Nibiru drew near. The outlook for humans was grim. It seemed unlikely anyone would survive after Nibiru passed. At the break of dawn, a farmer was jolted awake. The morning light had just begun to touch the mountains to the east. Usually, his animals would be excited for feeding time at sunrise, but today they were wildly agitated. His wife mumbled sleepily as he rushed out of bed to check on the barn. What he found was chaos. His horses were in such a panic that one tragically broke its neck trying to escape. His sheep were frantically running around, some crashing into the pen's stone walls with enough force to injure themselves. As ancient predictions come true, disaster begins to unfold. A catastrophe from above. The farmer was deeply troubled by the animal's strange behavior. He suspected it had something to do with the new object in the sky, a star that had appeared months ago but had grown significantly larger over time. At first, it was merely another light among the stars, but now it loomed large, a constant presence overhead, visible even during the day. This object in the sky now had discernible features such as clouds, mountains, and oceans, much like Earth's moon. However, unlike the moon, which is passive and familiar, this object brought a sense of foreboding. It was hard to tell if it was actually getting bigger or just coming closer, but either way, it dominated the sky and the minds of those who saw it. The animal's terror seemed a direct reaction to the object's oppressive presence. Birds took to the sky in a panic, not singing but screeching. Suddenly, the farmer felt the ground shake, a low vibration at first that grew into a rumble. He realized it wasn't just his imagination. The ground itself was trembling. The vibration was accompanied by a deep hum, a sound so low it was almost beyond hearing. This noise didn't just fill the air, it seemed to penetrate through it, causing a wave of nausea to hit the farmer so hard he had to kneel. As he did, he wondered about the Anunnaki, those sky beings who had come to Earth and now had departed. Had they known this would happen? Was this disaster a result of their actions, or was it an unfortunate coincidence? He was bent over, sick to his stomach, as the earth started to shake more violently than he had ever felt before. Earthquakes were not new to him. He had experienced quite a few, but this one was different. It was terrifying and unstoppable. As the ground moved like a stormy ocean, he turned and saw his barn collapsing. He thought about his horses, especially his favorite one, and hoped they were safe. He wished he could run to save them, but the shaking was so severe that he couldn't even stand properly. Then his house fell apart. Another wave of sickness hit him as he realized that his wife and 3 children were likely still asleep inside. He hoped desperately that they hadn't woken up to feel their last moments. But then he heard his wife's screams mixed with the cries of his youngest child, and his own screams joined theirs in a terrifying chorus. Suddenly, all these sounds were drowned out by an even louder noise. The ground itself seemed to roar as it split further. He covered his ears, but it was useless. The noise was so loud that he could feel it shaking his bones. Looking toward the west, he saw the old grassy hill where the large olive tree stood, the tree that had been there as long as anyone could remember. Beneath that tree were the graves of his ancestors, and he wondered if he would soon join them. From beyond that hill, he saw what looked like huge mountains of fire. Massive stones glowing red-hot were being flung into the sky, so high that they reached the clouds and disappeared into the upper reaches of the sky. Thick smoke rose from the direction of the hill, turning the blue sky black and blotting out the morning sun. When the ground steadied slightly, he staggered toward what was left of his house, driven by a slim hope that his wife was still alive. But as he moved, he noticed red-hot coals, like those used in cooking, falling around him. They landed in the grass and set it ablaze with a fierce hiss. He realized then that the massive stones he had seen being thrown into the sky were now coming back down. They were getting bigger and more numerous as they crashed back to Earth, destroying everything in their path. His barn was quickly consumed by these flaming stones, and the shadows they cast on the ground grew larger and more ominous, signaling their increasing size. He stopped in his tracks as a huge shadow loomed over him. He knew what was coming and whispered a prayer. The shadow grew larger and darker, and the sound of destruction roared toward him as the shadow covered his entire farm. The ground shook violently, turning solid buildings into crumbling heaps as if they were just piles of sand. In the midst of this chaos, a fisherman quickly tied ropes around a wooden post, attempting to secure his wildly bucking boat. The waves grew larger and more fierce, threatening to sweep the boat away. He clung to the hope that his knots would withstand the storm. From above, chunks of burning debris rained down, hissing as they hit the water, adding to the fisherman's confusion. Just hours earlier, the day had been calm and sunny, perfect for fishing, and he had expected to sell his catch for a good price. Now, an unexpected and violent storm had ruined his plans, throwing everything into darkness and chaos. The wind grew stronger and louder, turning the rain into painful missiles that struck his skin like sharp stones. Time seemed to stretch and distort under the strain of the ongoing disaster. Small houses in his village couldn't withstand the earthquake and collapsed, burying residents under rubble. Only a few managed to escape, making their way slowly towards the safety of nearby caves, hindered by the continuous shaking of the ground. Suddenly, a powerful blast of wind knocked the fisherman down, pinning him against the sandy ground. Any buildings that had initially survived were now being torn apart by the relentless wind. Sand and debris battered him, and boats that weren't securely tied were lifted into the air, crashing down in pieces. After a struggle, the fisherman managed to stand, though he could hardly see through the swirling dust around him. He followed the sound of a distant child crying, moving towards it, but the sound seemed to come from far away. Then, as quickly as it had escalated, the storm stopped. The winds calmed, and the rain fell heavily to the ground, as if suddenly released from the sky. The earth stopped shaking, though a deep rumbling could still be felt beneath the surface. Looking around, he saw other survivors, weighed down with heavy bags, heading toward the caves. Amidst the quiet, he heard the unexpected sound of rushing water. Turning around, he was shocked to see that the sea had withdrawn, leaving a vast expanse of mud where water used to be. His boat was now dangling from the post, and below, thousands of fish struggled in the mud, gasping for water. What will happen when the sea returns? Share your thoughts, comment, and subscribe for more gripping stories like this one.